I'm going to show you how to paint Luke Skywalker from Star Wars Legion in a way that's fast and easy and gets a great result. Let's get started. What's going on, guys? Jared from Mini Junkie here. If you're painting up your Rebels from Star Wars Legion and you've got your Luke Skywalker model ready to go, I've got a way that's really fast, really fast, and really gets a great looking result. Very similar to how we did the Rebel troops in my other video recently. It's not going to be like a crystal brush winner here, and it's not going to be spectacular, but it's going to look fantastic on the table, and it's going to be easy for a beginner or even an intermediate painter to pull off. So let's take a look at some examples of the final product, and then we'll get into the how-to right away.
So we're doing Luke in a Bespin theme, and we're not going to be doing any source lighting with the lightsaber. First thing I did is I primed Luke with the surface primer, Vallejo surface primer desert tan color that I used in the tutorial for the Rebel troops. And then this step is optional, but I also came in with some white primer from Vallejo and did a bit of a zenithal highlight over top of him. By the way, I think more of this video will be in focus than they have been recently, but I think I also managed to overexpose this one, so at times some of these steps are going to look very bright and hard to see through the video. My apologies, I'm going to keep working on that. For the next step, I wanted to block in the flesh just using a glaze of Vallejo Skin Wash ink. It's called Skin Wash, but it's not really a wash. And I was trying to thin this down a bit because it is really strong. And I tried to thin it down with the Quick Shade Medium from Army Painter, but I don't even think that was enough. You'll see I kind of do this a couple times. And I'll get into why I didn't think that was enough in a second. So you can see as I start to apply this, it's pretty strong. It's quite orangey. It's quite a dark. Like he looks like he's got quite a suntan going on here. Ultimately, I decided to keep going with it. I think you could explore some other approaches here. In fact, he has so little flesh showing. You could just paint his flesh like with Bugman Glow or whatever your preferred flesh tone is. I was just experimenting here. In the end, I decided to effectively use this as if I had given him a flesh wash, and I'm going to go back over and paint him, sort of paint all the highlights in with the flesh, basic flesh paint, and you'll see that in a future step. So this step is based on a color I effectively discovered in the Rebel tutorial, where Secret Weapon Stone Wash creates this really nice greenish gray look over white or tan color. So here I'm basically blocking it in over almost his entire outfit, which is, like I said, it's a very monotone uniform, so you get a whole lot of mileage out of this step, and when it dries you've got deep shadows and some nice highlights showing through. Next step is to do Luke's blonde hair, but obviously his hair is very sandy, sort of a sandy blonde, dirty blonde, not yellowish. So even though I am going to use yellow ink to glaze over the white or the tan primer, I'm adding a little sepia ink to that yellow, so I create a bit of a dirtier yellow because I don't want it to just be this bright primary yellow color. You'll see how that turns out in a minute here. And again, I'm sorry that it's a little hard to see these particularly bright steps because of the fact that I think I had the ISO set too high on the camera or something like that, because it's fairly overexposed. Hopefully you can make out each step, however, and follow roughly what I'm doing. So he's still too blonde, and I'm going to come back to that a bit later, and you'll see I'm going to leave that drying right now, and I'm going to go in with the sepia ink from Vallejo, and I'm just going to use it undiluted and paint over all of the belt pouches and the holster of his blaster and things like that. And again, in the previous video, we saw that it just creates a really nice, kind of like an aged dark leather effect. With this outfit, Luke's boots are also basically a kind of a tan color, very similar to the rest of his outfit. So in an act of laziness, or I'm not sure what, or experimenting, I just added Secret Weapon Flesh Wash directly to our previous dirty blonde hair mix, thinking that might get me the kind of off tan sort of look that I was going for on the boots. And again, just like laid that on. And on a whim, I decided to add some of that just to his part to darken it. Next thing I did is I took some Shabti bone and I went in, I thinned it with a bit of water, and I just wanted to tidy up. For example, there was some of the skin wash got onto his collar of his shirt / uniform, or anywhere that the skin wash kind of got on things like sleeves, or anywhere that I needed to clean it up. And ultimately what I ended up doing as well is just applying this as a little bit of a highlight to some parts of the uniform that I felt the brightness could be brought back up a little bit. That's very much an optional step. You don't really need to do it, but I just decided it looked kind of nice, and I did it on things like knees and elbows, things like that. Luke was definitely too blonde at this stage, so now that the top, like his hair had dried, I took some straight Agrex Earthshade, not the gloss one, and just painted it right onto didn't even thin it, just paint it right onto his hair. Just try to darken it up, make it a little dirty blonde. With the previous Ushabti bone step done, I went back in with the stone wash from Secret Weapon and put it back on. Then I took this primer white color and just touched up a few spots on the lightsaber where I'd gotten like a dot of ink or something like that, or a bit of the stone wash on the lightsaber, because really we want a very pure white base to use for that. So here, using some cadian flesh tone, I'm going to go back, like I said earlier in the video, I'm going to go back and basically block in all the flesh highlights using this, and so the underpaint that I did of the flesh wash ink is going to really just become what normally would be achieved with the wash and create some shading. This is a very backwards way of doing flesh, and you don't have to follow these steps. You could just either, just base coat and give it a flesh wash and a highlight. The highlight I'm using is kislev flesh, just thinned out of the bottle as always, with some water, some thinner, and just touch up things like cheekbones and the nose and the jawbone and things like that, the knuckles and whatnot. In the end, he ends up with pretty good looking flesh despite the misstep at the beginning. Going in to paint his eyes, very much again an optional step that you could probably skip at this scale and not be too bad off. But what I do is I'm using Menoth White Highlight from Privateer P3, going in with my brush kind of flattened into a bit of a wedge, and I'll probably do a video about painting eyes the way I paint eyes anyway in future, but hold your breath and brace your fingers as best you can and just gently paint in the white of the eye. That's my way of doing it anyway. While that's drying, moving over to the lightsaber, I'm using Minitaire Ghost Tint Plasma Fluid, thinned with just a little bit of water, and what I end up doing is I think 2 to 3 coats, letting it dry each time, because I want it to retain a lot of the brightness of the white underneath it and just create this glowing blue, and the plasma fluid looks just like a lightsaber in my opinion. You'll notice I'm doing one step while another step dries, that kind of thing. So now that the whites of his eyes are dry, I go in with a rounded tip and I use just a tiny bit of black ink from Vallejo. I like this because it's a little bit less bold and stark than a black paint, and a little more forgiving to work with. Getting into the home stretch, we're going to take some of the shine off the inks with a spray of matte varnish. You can use any that you prefer. Then I'm going in with scale color heavy metal, or you could use really any mid-tone metallic, and I'm just painting in the lightsaber hilt and his weapon on his hip. You could use any metallic you like, really. Really getting close to the finish, a little bit of Nuln Oil gloss applied. Notice this is after the matte varnish step. I'm just going to bring a little bit of depth and shine to the metallics with this. We're already getting to the basing step. I'm using Vallejo Desert Sand Paste, just like in my Desert Bases tutorial video. When this is dry, I go in and I just give it a wash of Seraphim Sepia shade, and that's it. Here's a look at the final result of Luke in his Bespin outfit, ready for your Legion Force. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing, click the bell for notifications, like and share and all that good stuff, and we'll see you next time.